is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview slash prediction video. And today, we have Sunday Night Football. It's Lions, it's Texans. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we are back with another preview slash prediction video. This video is also being brought to you by BetUS. So use that code YouTube150 to get a 150% deposit match on your first deposit and 125% deposit match on your next two, up to $2,000. That's YouTube150. All right, now we're over here on BetUS. Again, use that promo code YouTube150. You can see all the different sports betting options as well as casino games and horse racing. If you make an account, you can see these betting odds change as the games are live and as they are happening. Let me know in the comments what your favorite line is this week. For me, I really like this Patriots-Bears game. I might be a hater sometimes, but truly, I like the Patriots, and at +6, I think that's a great number to get it at. But I would even take a look at the money line at +225. So that's YouTube150. Now let's get back to the video. We got a big one to talk about. And this was a game coming into the season that, for me personally, this was one that I circled. I didn't really look back at what my prediction was heading into the year. I know I had us like 8-0, which weirdly enough has actually come out kind of accurate. But I think this was maybe the first game that I had us taking a loss. Like, this was the big one, man. It was Houston. I thought this could be a Super Bowl type of preview game. And unfortunately, injuries seem they're going to play a big impact on this game. For the Lions side, the injury that I always hate to see, that always scares me the most, has happened. And then on the Texans side, their entire receiving core, we're not sure if these guys are even going to play in this game. So we're going to start there first. Just a quick little update. Some of these things are questionable, so we won't know until really game time what's going on with a few of these designations. But we're going to do our best with the preview slash prediction. Hopefully we get the score right. I was looking back at last week. If the Packers make that field goal and somehow it ends up just being 24-17, we would have hit last week's prediction right on the nose. So we were just off. We were up by 3 points last week. We had 24-17. It was 24-14. Let's see if we can do a little bit better and potentially nail it this week. Been close really now twice. Let's see if we can hit it this week. Here are the injury designations as of now for this game. And we'll just hit on the key ones here. First off, Zadarius Smith is questionable. Now this is one that isn't injury related. It's that he was set to be on a bye week with the Cleveland Browns, but then we traded for him and the Lions let him have Wednesday and Thursday off. He got back with us on Friday. We're just not sure if he's going to play or not. He has to kind of understand what he's going to be asked to do. Seems like he's itching to play. He seemingly wanted to be a Lion. He was pretty hyped when the deal got done. It's just as of now, we're not sure if he's going to be ready yet or he's going to be up this week, because the Lions are set to have Josh Pascal and Mekhi Wingo back for this week, which they did not have last week, which is massive. So if he can't play, we'll have those two guys back. Hopefully he can, but even if he does, I would expect it to be in some type of rotational role. And if he doesn't go, I guess this kind of counts as his bye week. The big one, though, is Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker is officially out for this game with a shoulder injury that popped up, I believe, on Thursday. I hate to see this. Now, Dan Campbell made it sound like this isn't going to be a long-term, super serious type of injury, but this is the one that concerns me more than any other injury. Anytime I see Taylor Decker pop up that he's not going to play, I immediately get concerned, like, we might, this might be it. This might be the one that gets us. So I hate to see this. Dan Skipper, I expect to step in at tackle for us. I'm not sure if they're going to move Penei Sewell to left tackle. Maybe move Penei Sewell to left tackle to put him next to Graham Glasgow. That could create some good opportunities running the football. Or they may just kick in Dan Skipper right to left tackle. That would be my assumption, that that's going to be the Lions' answer in this game, especially considering who we're facing this week and guys like Danielle Hunter and Derek Barnett, what they have on the edge. They have guys that can really get after it. Continuing on, though, you could see there's a couple guys that are out that we're expecting to be back soon in terms of Ife Melifonwu, Emmanuel Mosley, and hopefully Malcolm Rodriguez as well as Roderick Martin. He's in that 21-day window. And then no Jalen Reeves-Maybin this week. He didn't practice all week, so we'll see how long-term this gets. And then no Malcolm Rodriguez, a little bit thin at linebacker going into this week's game. On to the Texans side of things, the big one here, of course, that everybody's waiting for is Nico Collins, who is questionable to play this week. Now, he didn't start practicing until Friday. We're not sure if he's going to go or not. Now, as I'm in the editing process, we did get this alert from Adam Schefter. Nico Collins activated, so I would expect that he's probably going to play in this game. So just keep that in mind. If I say later in the video, I'm not sure if he's going to play or not, that it sounds like he's going to play. Just going through the editing right now. Not exactly sure, to the point that I was like, I'm going to go back and watch when Nico Collins was on this offense just to see how it looked different when Nico Collins was there. And truly, he opens this offense completely. He is a vertical threat. He breaks the game open on one play, 70 yards, and the game completely changes. He is their go-to guy. He is their man coverage beater. Nico Collins has been outstanding this season. They'd love to have him back, because they also may not have Tank Dell either. Without Nico Collins, Tank Dell has become the guy in this passing attack for the Texans offense. So the Tank Dell one is one I would absolutely circle. In man coverage, he has gotten the majority of the target share in those spots. Tank Dell has seemingly kind of become the next answer for them. If he doesn't play, they'd be out potentially their top 3 receivers going into this game, with guys like Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz probably picking up a lot of the slack, as well as Joe Mixon. So that's a big one there. And then, of course, no Will Anderson for this game. So instead, it's going to be mainly about Danielle Hunter, Derek Barnett, who's expected to play a lot more with him being out for this game. And I would keep an eye on Foley. I think that's how you pronounce it, their defensive tackle. Honestly, they shortened his name. I don't know how to pronounce his name before it's shortened. I'm just guessing on Foley. Maybe it's Foley. I'm not sure. But their defensive tackle is questionable to go this week. He is a starter alongside Tim Settle, who is their best interior defensive lineman, but he's a guy that I think you can go at a little bit as a run defender, though he does do a nice job of getting upfield. He'll be someone to also keep an eye on here too, because their depth isn't great on the interior defensive line, and they also just moved off Khalil Davis, playing pretty poorly to be honest, so it's very understandable. But with all that being said, let's move into the preview/prediction side of things here. We're going to start off with this Houston Texans defense, and just overall, I think this Houston Texans team is probably one of the best coach teams that I've seen, just in terms of finding answers offensively, defensively, without having certain pieces. This is a super creative team that mixes up a lot of tendencies. You don't get the same thing every single game that you watch. I feel like they have different game plans offensively and defensively each game they go into. Now, they have their base that they like to get to in terms of offensively, how they run the football, and defensively as well. But my goodness, this is a very creative defense that is extremely well coached and that has a lot of talent really on all 3 levels. Now, I will say their cornerback play has been a little bit spotty so far this season. Kamari Lassiter being the rookie, and also Stingley's been a little bit up and down so far this season. Great receivers have given him trouble at times this year. We saw last week Devontae Adams gave him some trouble in coverage, but then they have a guy that's just a complete matchup piece, Jalen Petrie. Not having Jimmy Ward, who has also been a huge piece for them, especially against the run, now being the guys like Kalen Bullock in the back end, as well as Eric Murray. They still have good safety play, but they can be a little bit exposed, I think, at that safety position a little bit.
And you'll have to keep in mind when you see him in these shell coverage looks, and this quarters look specifically here, the safety play has been a little bit hit and miss. Specifically, Kalen Bullock has been pretty aggressive. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions try to take a shot between these 2 safeties.
So let's start with this Texans run defense first. So as I touched on, I think you have to attack this interior defensive line. That's kind of been an issue for Houston over the last few seasons when you watch them defensively. They've always been strong at edge rusher. Now not having Will Anderson, that'll affect that a little bit. I'm sure Danielle Hunter will see a lot of Dan Skipper in this game. But the interior defensive line has always been a little bit shaky. I think especially with Davis now being traded away, I think Foley, you have to go at their interior defensive lineman at the point of attack. Tim Settle, to me, is their best piece on the interior defensive line. Sometimes he looks like the best piece on the defensive line just in general. He's typically playing at their 3 technique. Tim Settle is a good player. He gets into the backfield a lot. He is a disruptor into the backfield, and those guys thrive at getting upfield rather than handling combo blocks and double teams at the point of attack. I think you can go at those guys alongside the interior defensive line, and I don't think the Lions will have any problem really whatsoever reaching blocks or sealing down blocks and being able to set up to the second level with some of their zone rushing scheme in this game. Now, that being said, on the second level, Henry To'o, their linebacker, has been very good this season. He's hard to connect with, and at the same time, he reads and closes quickly as a linebacker. You'll see it in coverage, and you'll see it as a run defender. At times, put him in more so responsible for like the C gap, so he has an opportunity to scrape and be a little bit more free as a run defender rather than just having to get downhill and fill. Next to him, Aziz, who was their linebacker in that spot. Now that's moved on to Neville Hewitt, who struggles a little bit more in terms of change of direction, but he's more of the thumper at the point of attack. It frees up Henry To'o to fly around, and he is typically the guy that I think you have to focus on in the entire front seven in terms of running the football. Outside of the matchup at the edge defender position between Barnett and Danielle Hunter and how well your tackles handle that responsibility, if you're talking about that entire front seven and the linebacker position specifically, Henry To'o is the guy that constantly is the one that seemingly is making plays in the backfield, disrupting run plays and kind of shutting them down before they even get started. That being said, in terms of how do you run the ball at this team, outside zone plays, the weak zone plays where you can specifically work towards that nose tackle and away from Tim Settle, as long as you're sealing the backside, which I think the Lions will be able to do in this game, as long as they're doing that well, then you can also work directly towards Henry To'o. We saw a team like the Buffalo Bills do that successfully. To me, that makes a lot of sense in this game. Again, I don't think our interior offense line will have much of a problem reaching up to these blocks. The stretch zone run has seemingly found the most success against this defense from what I've just charted through from watching these Houston Texans games. Danielle Hunter hasn't been excellent at the point of attack. Now, he's had his good reps. Barnett's had his good reps. You also have Dylan Horton, who I think Dylan Horton, probably the guy that I circle most for, like, this is the guy that can actually set the edge and give you some problems, especially running behind a guy like Dan Skipper potentially. Dylan Horton out of TCU is the guy that I really circle on that edge position, but I just feel like they haven't had an elite, consistent run stopper at those spots that just settles the edge and sets the point of attack, and because of that, I think stretch runs has led to a little bit more success. Find success with receivers, run blocking in this game, whether that's cornerbacks, but also the safety position, specifically, again, without having Jimmy Ward, who kind of felt like a run stopper back there. I think you have to be a little bit careful, however, running to the play side behind Dan Skipper with those stretch runs, because that's going to open the opportunity for them to get guys like Danielle Hunter, like Barnett, upfield, crossing his face, and creative negatives that way. Just based on how this is probably going to go schematically, this feels like a Jahmyr Gibbs type of game to me. But that being said, this is a defense that does miss a lot of tackles. Like, that's their biggest issue that I've seen. They have 62 missed tackles on the season. It's noticeable when you watch them. And because of that, maybe it is more of a David Montgomery game. But just based on how it's going to go schematically, I wouldn't be surprised if Jahmyr Gibbs has a big game in this game. They play a lot of wide techniques about how they do things schematically, so they'll play those 9 techniques on the edge. And because of that, the Lions, like when they played San Fran last season, they opened up a lot of those pin pull looks, and that could definitely be effective in this game. It also wouldn't surprise me then if the Lions said, hey, let's put Penei Sewell, say, at left tackle, put Skipper at right tackle, because then because of that, we can create pin pulls off of it. We can allow Graham Glasgow and Penei Sewell to go kind of lead the way. That would make some sense to me in this game. Or maybe they try to seal with a guy like Dan Skipper and pull a guy like Penei Sewell across. But the pin pull look, specifically with the wide receivers down blocking Henry To'oTo'o and hitting up to the safeties, makes a ton of sense. The Lions found success against it in the playoff game last season.
Now, I loved what the Jets did in terms of eye candy with the pre-snap motion to kind of shift gaps. In this play, they put Petrie into the box here to give run support. But you notice on the backside how the tight end, even with the eye candy, can't get up to Henry To'oTo'o before he crashes down and makes a stop against the run. So I love the eye candy movement to slide gaps, put defensive backs in the box, and help yourself on these zone runs. That being said, though, again, this is where To'oTo'o shines.
However, we saw a team like the Buffalo Bills, their own little wrinkle, said, let's go jumbo package offensively. Let's change their defensive front. They kind of got out of using the 9 techniques, and now instead, multiple tight ends on the field with an extra offensive lineman. They were able to reduce their defensive end down into 7 techniques and work against them that way. Now, with the Lions being a little bit lighter at offensive tackle, I don't know how often we'll actually be able to use jumbo package in this game, because typically that is Dan Skipper's role, and if he's out there all the time, the Lions just may not use that. So pin pull looks maybe where they lean a little bit more in this game.
The other subtle wrinkle from the Bills is you can see their left tackle. You see how his offensive line split is much wider to deal with that 9 technique. It helped him get out there, set that hinge block. That way they could use these zone run plays to hit up to the second level and not have to worry about as much of the crossfade.
Run pass option by the Jets, the little wrinkle that they use there to find some success, and now that's a little bit more passing the football, but to find success with the aggression from a guy like Jalen Petrie off of the slot, that's a little wrinkle the Lions could also utilize to get the ball out of their hands quickly and find some success as an extension of the run game. Wouldn't surprise me to see the Lions utilize that a little bit with a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, and also defensively, they don't constantly match personnel. So for me, my expectation would be the Lions lean into a little bit more heavy personnel here, multiple tight ends, 12 personnel, and maybe a little bit of misdirection for a guy like Henry To'oTo'o to try to implement some eye candy with a guy like Jameson Williams being back this weekend as that weapon. May see Houston kind of address that and really try to focus on stopping the run. I'm sure that they will, but I think the Lions will really want to try to lean into that. This game, even more so than others, is extremely important to stay out of third and long situations. One, they're going to make you kind of create longer developing routes to find answers there to actually get first downs, I'm sure, without Decker, and because of that, they're going to rely on their ability to create pressure, which they probably will have some success. So staying out of third and long is extremely important. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's extremely important in this game. It always is, but it definitely is in this one.
And on more of these inside runs, first off, you get this offset eye. So you're getting this 5-2 front. Now notice how Henry To'oTo'o is a little bit more clear in terms of the gap responsibility here to fly to the football. You also get this blown block from Tim Settle working that 3 technique. Now on this play, I love how on the backside to utilize the right tackle to get up to that second level. Kind of a wrinkle that we've used before as well, because they trust that they can seal the 3 technique. Let's go hit the second level out of the gun, and now we work behind that play side.
But pass defense wise, this is a team that is a little bit more heavy zone coverage. About 68.5% of the time they played zone coverage versus being 18th so far this season in terms of man coverage rate. However, on first down, like a lot of teams, a lot more single high usage, cover 3, cover 1 out of that. That being said, though, when they do blitz out of cover 3, one of the little things that made it tough against us, say against Tampa Bay, that they'll do as well, is they're going to aggressively try to take away the flash. That is something to really keep an eye on there. Try to force things kind of back inside and not give you some of those easy reads. And also they do a nice job in those zone coverage looks, specifically in the cover 3, taking away kind of those deep over routes out of play action sets. To'oTo'o has done a nice job kind of finding those. So you have to be willing to get underneath into those level 1 throws. And I think the big thing about this defense is one of the best places to have success, we talk about missing tackles against the run, is to make them tackle underneath. Make them tackle, make them wrap up and rally, because that's where they can have some issues. And you can turn a lot of short passes into much bigger gains by just their inconsistencies tackling in an open space, I would look to kind of attack that as an offense. I would make them tackle in space, specifically in this game. First down coverage, like I said, it's a little bit more single high, a little more cover 3, cover 1. Kamari Lassiter feels a little bit less confident in these spots.
Now, you will also notice that the cornerback play, even to the boundary side here, is going to give the sideline. And this is Lassiter in the spot, playing a little bit more inside leverage, giving you the numbers, giving you the sideline if you're willing to make the throw.
When he particularly gets these one-on-one matchups, and if the Lions are leaning more heavy personnel, that could absolutely be where you find a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown one-on-one with some of these wide corners. And if that is a Kamari Lassiter, that's something that I would for sure use. Or even some quick routes to Jamison Williams one-on-one. If you get him outside wide and they want to put St. wide and he takes Derek Stingley, Stingley's aggression, specifically playing underneath, might lean you towards, hey, let's utilize JMO. Let's let him create a little bit more space because he's going to be a little bit more protective over top, seemingly, and a little bit less confident of being able to cover over top against Jamison. So quick throws out wide to Jamison Williams would make a ton of sense in this game. It's your occasional rotation of like quarters coverage in these spots and cover 0, but for the most part, it's a lot more with their single high coverage. Now, in second down, you talk about 7+. That's where you get more into kind of those cover 4 looks, and I think screens are probably the best method here a lot of times, just because, again, you can force these guys have to come up and tackle. I think a lot of times that works. And then medium to short, again, it's going to be more of your cover 3 looks defensively. Meanwhile, once you get into 10+, they're going to go a little bit more single high coverage. I don't think they're the most nuanced team in terms of like, oh, when it's cover 1 and we blitz, crazy where we're blitzing from. I don't think it's a ton of that. It's just more straight up cover 1 man coverage. And a lot of times they have a lot of really good pieces in these spots. Now, they will give up the outside routes. They will give up outside releases towards the field, specifically from the slot. So if we're willing to make that throw to the slot in those spots, that's where a guy like St. Brown can be very heavily utilized.
And it's also where bunches and movement pre-snaps should probably be utilized, because so much of what they do to me isn't as much of disguise in terms of like all of these varieties of different zone coverages in these spots, but it's more so about the leverage they play with. And it seemingly they're just taking away the high percentage throws. We're going to force you to hit the sideline on the field side, right? They're going to do those certain things to try to make it a little bit higher, lower percentage throws. And for me, I think that's where the movement has to come in play. Stacks, bunches, force them to sort things out so you can create easier leverage matchups and potentially closer splits, which the Lions typically do a lot.
Third down coverage from short to medium, that's where you get a little bit more cover 4, cover 6. Look, this is a team that does a really nice job with some of their, palms looks in coverage, or specifically with some of their matching coverage out of these cover 4 and cover 6 spots to the single receiver side. That's where you have to utilize mesh looks and also the running back, whether that's wheel routes or angle routes. Their linebacker is going to take your back one-on-one, and their single side receiver is going to get matched up one-on-one. The backside then is going to sit more into those straight zone coverage looks, which is going to allow you opportunities to mesh that over the middle of the field. We saw Buffalo find success with this. Mesh the middle of the field, force them to carry, and then you can get an open receiver on the backside outside of it. And still third down looks, you can also open up dig routes. The problem is, again, those are a little bit longer developing, and if the Lions are struggling in pass protection, that could be difficult to get to. Even without blitzing, it's just the fact that it can be difficult to get to in some of those zone coverage looks, depending on how the Lions pass protect, and I'm sure that they're going to be okay with, like, hey, make them wait on these routes. We expect our pressure to get home. So that's going to be a battle, and it's why the Lions have to try to keep it into some of those medium downs, where they're going to go cover 4, they're going to go cover 6. That way they can utilize spacing, get the ball to golf stands quickly, or try to attack that single side that gets locked up a little bit more in terms of being one-on-one. You do get to those cover 1 looks, so defensively, like I said, they'll give up the outside, but they also don't seemingly follow in coverage, specifically when they're going like cover 1 blitz. They don't follow their matchups, so that's where you have an opportunity to create matchups that you like.
One of the most unique things about their cover 1 blitzes is that they'll drop a backer and they'll end up playing inside outside, say on this side by the 3x1 with that slot cornerback. So whoever releases outside the slot can take it. If it releases inside, the linebacker can step down and take it. And he'll drop and get depth. So they really kind of block off like drags or slants in these looks for at least the first guy coming through, and then the pressure is supposed to be there. So it'll make it difficult to find a hot read. I would suspect the Lions maybe do something like the Jets on this last play, where you kind of get a little bit of a pick and you can see the flat open up because they switch in man coverage pre-snap, where the Lions could use potentially a wheel route out of this, something that breaks toward the sidelines, but a way to kind of pull some of those outside cornerbacks and that slot cornerback inside to then get into the flats, something towards the numbers and kind of work against what they're trying to protect, which is usually the straight middle of the field hot read. They can try to work against that potentially by using some sort of pick towards the sideline.
When Jets put Devontae Adams in the slot, you can create matchups and kind of get away from guys like Stingley, for example. That's where you can find some of those matchups that you like a little bit better, because they don't follow directly into coverage when they get into some of those cover one and blitz looks. So that's specifically going to be about the Lions finding matchups in those spots where you have to find your matchups a little bit more. I would also say in short yardage, cover one looks, utilize the chip flats, utilize switch releases, delayed releases out of boot plays. That's where they can cause some confusion and potentially get guys open. We saw the Jets find success out of that. And the more of those third and long looks, a couple of things. Number one, I would try to create catch and run opportunities to get the ball out quicker because, again, I think they're going to want you to play into more of a long developing set. So maybe that's one of those receiver screens where you throw the little drag underneath and you create a screen where you're blocking up into the second level out of that, specifically when they go to those zone coverage looks, which they probably will because they're going to want to make us get downfield and take our time. So because that, I would use underneath plays and just trust the fact that I can hopefully make a couple guys miss and pick up first downs along the way. Motion underneath for spacing to try to create level one beaters. Make their linebackers, make their defensive backs tackle, create spacing with some of your underneath motion, specifically against that zone coverage to find spacing in those spots and to be able to get the ball out quickly for Goff.
I'm always a fan of overloading coverage, and you can see how the motion can be valuable because even here, maybe they switch up and say, Petrie, you're blitzing, he's back at running back. That way I can step over and play man coverage and still disguise this. I still love overloading because you can see it kind of creates a natural stack, and you get the motion to at least give you some sort of maybe tell that, hey, this is going to be man coverage here, and this is going to be one of their man looks, and that's why they're adjusting like they are to this motion because they're trying to figure out who's going to now blitz once that running back kicks out to receiver.
Creativity defensively in coverage specifically comes from their ability to show quarters looks and go to cover zero, or vice versa, where they'll show zero coverage looks and get into cover four. Out of those looks defensively, I like for the Lions to, number one, have one-on-one matchups on the outside that they can go to because you're going to get singled up there and you can create one-on-one matchups, deep out routes, for example, if that's what you want to go to. Or number two, utilize stacks, right? If they want to do this, hey, we're going to show cover four and then we're going to roll to cover zero and the safety's going to come back over top. Or the flip side of that, we're going to show cover zero and then we're going to go into this quarters looks. I would create stacks out of that to potentially create leverage and also create spacing. That way you can work underneath those underneath routes and create catch and run opportunities with a guy like Sam Laporta through stack setup. Back to their cover three looks though, because we said on first downs that they're going to do that. It's going to be a lot more spot dropping than say match coverage. And I bring that up because we saw the Lions last week against Green Bay, who has all these vertical pushing routes. The Lions, for the first time I think this season, I had really noted them going into this cover three match coverage so that they could take away the seams. This is a defense that's going to play a little bit more spot dropping, that's going to be a little bit more aggressive to the flats. It's going to open opportunities to potentially try to hit the seam for Goff if he wants to try to thread the needle on a few of those throws. This could be the spot to get Sam Laporta working the seam, find the target that you like, get a little bit more high pointed in those spots, and allow him to attack those spots because they're a lot more spot drop than specifically playing aggressive to cover and carry those routes, and they're also going to aggressively try to take away the flats. So maybe that's your opportunity for delays where you push the seam and you see if you can hit Laporta. If you can't, you have a delayed whip route out of it that you can work back underneath on some of those early down throws if the Lions want to come out, spread the defense, and just throw the ball on first down because you're going to get a little bit more simplified looks for them defensively, cover one, cover three. That could be those opportunities, but again, I expect the Lions to go heavy personnel and really try to run the ball on first down. You're going to get one-on-ones on the outside, whether that's cover four on earlier downs, whether that's cover four in the red zone. I would look for double moves out of these spots. I think you have to have Jamison Williams at least one time on some sort of double move, whether that's a full-on like out and up, or maybe it's just kind of a stutter and go, or maybe it's just simply a vertical push. I think you have to use that at least once in this game because mainly I think their safeties are a little bit slow to try to help back over top. So if you have just like an out route in the slot, you run a vertical route on the outside, you're going to get that pure cover one matchup. And if Lassiter or Stingley, who likes to play aggressive underneath, because if you watch them in those cover four looks, they are aggressive to not try to give away under routes, and they don't pass those things off. They don't play over top. They're going to be aggressive to take that away. Double moves are going to be created. You're going to get pure one-on-one looks. Jamison should at least get an opportunity one time vertically, I would think, in those spots. Maybe Tim Patrick as well. I would utilize him at least to try to get one over top look into those spots. And play action could also be very effective here because you can hold kind of those field routes, and you could hold a guy like Jalen Petrie who's working in the slot to try to create some of your outside routes against some of those cover four looks. But their safeties can be a little bit slow over top. Also think back to what we did against Dallas, last season, where we used kind of the post from the slot with Jamison Williams to get behind their safeties. That's another real option for the Lions in this game. The point is that their safeties are a little bit slow to protect over top. That's why I would try to utilize a one-on-one that you can create specifically on the outside to get vertical over top.
Now, this is a well-done spacing route by the Jets to go split backs, short motion pre-snap, and open this up in a cover 6 look. You can see that on that quarter side, how much space is there between the linebacker. And again, this linebacker a little bit struggles in change of direction, so that's where you can create these great matchups like the Jets do here. Now, the backside, this being more of their cover 6 look, you see how the safety stays on top. They still lock underneath, so it gives you an opportunity with the running back. Maybe you can create a pick play out of that, get it out to him in the flat, let him work after the catch. You still create opportunities out of it, but the safety does stick over top here as they mix the cover 6, cover 4.
And finally, close splits, right? Simplify it, close splits, attack the flats. Those close splits stacks can allow you to get the ball out, create easy completions, and again, create run after catch opportunities and make their cornerbacks tackle one-on-one. Their linebacker play, I think they've done a nice job in terms of coverage here. I think toe of toes, they're in a lower grade. He's allowed a 122 pass rating. I think he's really tough to attack in zone coverage. I would more so look to attack Hewitt. As good as he's been in terms of pass rating allowed, which is a 34.9, which is incredible, I think that the more that you can get him in the mix of having to cover, having to tackle, having to change direction in open space, the more success you're probably going to find. I think that number is a little bit of an anomaly versus what I actually see on film. The creativity here, Petrie will blitz. There's no doubt about that, but they're a little bit less creative in terms of cover 1 and cover 0. They're a little bit more straightforward, and the player to watch that can create pressure is going to be Danico Autry. Obviously, it's going to be the matchup of Daniil Hunter if he's on Dan Skipper, but Danico Autry is kind of that guy that goes under the radar, the stunts up front, the games that they're going to create up front, and Danico Autry creating one-on-ones. How well did the Lions handle him? This wasn't a team that I watched and I thought, like, man, they're creating so much pressure with just their 4 alone. I never really felt that way. I think that number feels a little bit inflated. They have a 27.4% pressure rate, but they also blitz about the same as us, 29% of the time. That number just felt a little bit inflated to me. I think pressure comes more from longer developing plays where the quarterback has to hold on to the football by getting into 3rd and long or through directly blitzing rather than their front 4 just being dominant up front. That, of course, is going to be how well do we have Daniil Hunter, how well do our running back puts in those spots, and then Danico Autry utilizing some games up front, but that number feels a little bit inflated. I think if you drop back and you throw the ball in early downs, not going into a blitz look specifically defensively, I think you're going to have time as a quarterback to throw 1st and 2nd down. It's going to be about 3rd down when they're straightforward, like, hey, we're blitzing in this spot. But I think you're going to have time to throw against some of their 4-man rushers without question. It's just about how far do you actually have to get in those spots. But over to the other side of the ball, because the Texans offensively over the last few weeks has definitely struggled without having Nico Collins, and they become a team that's felt very reliant on Joe Mixon. But that being said, Joe Mixon is one of the best running backs that I've watched so far this season. You know, we do our weekly picks, so we have to prepare, we have to watch each game, and to me, Joe Mixon has been one of the most fun running backs to watch all season long. That guy is incredible. Like, to me, this is a better running back than what we saw from Josh Jacobs last week, who definitely found success. This is a stud, and he's also very utilized in their pass game as well, which makes him a real threat, and especially if you have all these receivers out, expect Joe Mixon to be constantly involved in this game. Now, this is a team that their base is a little bit more of the counter runs, but they're also going to go a little bit more throwback, I formation, tight ends used to block. One of the matchups to circle in this game, especially when the Texans are on offense and they're running the football, is going to be how our backers, which is depleted without Malcolm and without Jalen. So Trevor Nowatzki, Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, they may be on the field a little bit more. How do these guys play against heavy tight end looks and their tight ends leading the way to block? Because a lot of their big runs, these cutback lanes, have been set up by how well that their tight ends have blocked in line, how well they set the edge, and how well they've allowed them to create some of these big runs. They also utilize these lead blocks, which really help sell a lot of their counter pulls, because their lead blocker will also sell the counter, and they've done a really nice job of pulling their linebackers out of spots where they can get some of those cutback runs that set up out of it for sure. And I think their tight end / offensive linemen have done a really good job handling kind of the slanting up front from defensive linemen. So I don't think just creating some of those kicks where it's like, hey, let's slant down our defensive end into the B gap and then he gets to the A gap. I don't think that's going to have as much success on paper as it does against other teams, because seemingly they handle that well. I think their base running the football is more of those counter pull looks. It's kind of their base run package, and constantly it usually creates short to medium gains. You don't get a lot of big runs out of that, but you're going to get short to medium runs that they kind of try to live in offensively is some of those looks. Your defensive backs will be tested against the run, specifically backside, cornerback, safety, stepping down, giving you run support. they are going to be tested a ton, and this also could affect how the Lions play coverage, schematically speaking, as well, and we're about to get to that in a second. I expect them to be in the mix a lot, and again, they're going to have to show up once again this week because of all the cutback runs and how good Mixon is once he gets out into space. Speaking of the run game as well, the outside zone stretch runs are a little bit more of kind of the second level run that they like to get to here. It's got a little bit more variety in terms of how successful it actually is. This is where they typically pop runs, where they go nowhere on the runs, and there's a lot more negatives that kind of go into that. On second down, expect more of the outside zone runs for sure, because that's what they like to get to create some of those big run plays and explosives, but also, again, that's where you can find some negatives for sure. You'll get some rare inside zone / duo run plays that they'll try to get to, but the big thing that they do well is they attach kind of the jet runs to it. They're also going to do a nice job on top of that of utilizing the split zone runs to then again create more eye candy up front, and they do a job where you want to watch it and you say, okay, our defensive ends have to crash. They can't be sitting down, read and react, because that jet motion is going to hold them, and they're going to create run lanes for Mixon to just step down and run off of that. But the challenge is they create the jet to try to hold that backside edge, and then they utilize the split zone block as well in those spots to come hit that backside linebacker. So whether that's aggressively crashing downhill with the defensive end and letting the linebacker spill, they'll utilize basically two guys on the backside of those zone runs, where that's where the focus becomes. For me, this is a team that likes to run behind Shaq Mason, though he doesn't move that well laterally. You can definitely get upfield and create penetration and kick him back into those cutback lanes. That's why your safety run support is going to be a must, because they'll utilize multiple guys to create those cutback runs and find running lanes through that. I would occasionally utilize the safety blitz, especially if you can get your safety at a more aggressive alignment, if that's cover 3 or that's quarters coverage. If you can get your safety a little bit more aggressive alignment pre-snap, I would occasionally use my safety to step down and blitz. That way I'm in a spot to hopefully shut down and kind of chop down some of those cutback runs that they're going to try to set up. Behind Howard, I think he's done a nice job, and again, that would be behind Shaq Mason, but I expect Lee McNeil to absolutely dominate that matchup if he sees that matchup. I also think that this is going to be the DJ Reader game, like the game that we're going to be like, wow, DJ Reader was great, should be this game, and he needs to be this game. Juice Scruggs, their center, has been very up and down so far this season from what I've seen, especially when he's asked on play action plays or gap run scheme where he has to step over and handle defense tackle. He's been very inconsistent in those spots, and at left guard, we know that they have an absolute mess going on. At first, it was Kenyon Green, who wasn't even playing that well. Now he's injured, and now their backup, who's also last name is Green, has stepped into that role, and he's been super inconsistent, especially as a pass protector. They've had real problems at that spot. I expect them to try to stay away from that, get behind the right side of their offensive line, and I need our defensive linemen to dominate. This, to me, is a DJ Reader game. I think he has a massive game this week. Speaking back to kind of their fullback usage or their tight end usage, you'll get those toss runs where they'll do a nice job of utilizing fast motion or lead blocks to kind of lead the way, and also at times kind of minimize some of their guard play that has definitely been an issue so far this season. Their inside runs have been effective from what I've seen so far. Their inside zone plays, those combo blocks, they've actually found some success there with strong double teams. If I was Houston, I would kind of lean into that, their counter pulls and also their inside run plays, because I think that's where they find the most success rather than asking those guys to move and really move laterally and get up to the second level. Like, I don't think they have much success with that whatsoever. So you'll see their tight ends will utilize them to kind of lead the way. They'll utilize fast motion to try to kick those guys up to the second level rather than their offensive linemen. But their inside runs have actually found some success at times. So again, that's where I need them to be great, our interior defensive linemen, because if there's something that in terms of a staple that's found consistent success for me, it's been the inside runs for this team, and they may kind of settle it back and be like, that's how we're going to do this. I expect their linebackers to play well. They're going to get some of the most eye candy that they've had all season long because of how they utilize their lead blocks, but Jack Campbell has played at a super high level. He needs to continue that, and Alex, we know, is playing very fast. If those guys have a really good game, I expect us to do really well against this rushing attack. Their biggest problem is going to be Joe Mixon. He has been excellent in terms of bouncing runs, cutback runs, hitting the edge, inside runs, bam, and he's all of a sudden at that backside C gap and he's taken off upfield. So your DBs run support specifically, but how fast he plays through that is a problem. It's going to be great to get our edge defender position back because their tight ends are so involved in their run scheme, where if you're getting bullied by their tight ends, which at times we did against Green Bay, we're going to give up chunk runs left and right. Those guys have to be better. Pascal, Wingo, whoever is in those spots, they have to do much better than they did last week, and that's where I hopefully will see some Zadarius Smith, because he needs to help us in that area if he's out there this week. I hope we get to see him at least in some capacity, because he could actually prove to be very vital for how well we actually stop the run this week. When it turns into more of their second down look, 2nd and 8, you're going to get more inside run duo schemes, or you're going to get some more of those counter pulls. Their second and short spots, again, inside zone duo runs, and they've actually found success. So if they have a good first down play, they can turn those into first downs pretty quickly because of the inside rushing success that they've had in those spots, which again is going to directly challenge our interior players. but also the cutbacks and the big runs that we've seen out of that through Joe Mixon and through the defensive ends against some of their tight end play. On second and long, you're going to get more outside zones or trap runs because, again, that's where they get a little bit more hit and miss. So they may go negative, but they could also absolutely pop some of those runs. That's what we've seen so far this season with how well Mixon has actually ran the football and his contact balance and his ability to force missed tackles in those spots. Let's move over to this Houston Texans passing offense, which so far this season, the Lions have played the most man coverage in football. And against man coverage, typically their answer is going to be Nico Collins. 33% target share rate against man coverage, which is incredibly high. But when he hasn't been there, we've seen Tank Dell take on a lot of that responsibility so far this season. Against zone coverage, we've seen Robert Woods specifically become much more involved. So the Lions try to go more zone coverage in this game, specifically on base downs. You're probably going to see Robert Woods' usage rate click up. And against man coverage, if there is no Nico Collins, I would expect Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon to be much more involved, with Tank Dell being kind of their go-to guy. But I don't even know if he's going to be available this week, so we'll have to keep an eye on that specifically, because that's where Schultz and that's where Joe Mixon become much more of a threat to me within the passing game. And then zone coverage, again, that's where guys like Robert Woods tend to kind of excel and be a little bit more involved. I think what they've done well, they've done a really nice job, number one, at finding coverage beaters. But number two, it's the way that CJ Stroud just plays the position. He is not fast to hit his checkdowns. If he doesn't have pressure, he will stand in the pocket. He doesn't tend to just go underneath right away, and he will absolutely hold the ball. CJ Stroud, to me, has been one of the better quarterbacks that I've seen so far this season at just creating explosives through extending plays and creating broken plays. He is one of these guys that you absolutely need to collapse the pocket through that edge defender position, which, again, it's the perfect game for Za'Darius to find success in passing spots. Same thing with Wingo. Collapse the pocket, force him to step up. He's very quick to step up in the pocket, but I expect us to win on the interior, so we're going to have a presence there. We just have to do a nice job of collapsing the edges, because Stroud has done a great job of breaking these plays. If he feels it through the interior, spilling a play, and boom, here comes an explosive because the play just went on way too long. He's not really ever in a rush to get the ball out to his check down unless he has pressure in his face to immediately do. I think that it wouldn't surprise me in this game if the Lions, aggressively speaking, to not only help them against the run, but also against the pass, play a little bit more of an aggressive styled quarters defense. Safeties are a little bit more aggressive within their depth. I think that this offense has done a really nice job attacking cover 3 looks and exposing those and picking up chunk plays. So that could be a little bit of a danger for the Lions to play that, especially in terms of some of their spot dropping, because they do a lot of flood concepts and they found a lot of success kind of working off that play action or straight drops as well. And again, because they get their tight ends and running backs so involved, cover 3 can absolutely be attacked and they can utilize flood concepts and find a lot of success. And Stroud throws a really good ball into that second level, so that can become a problem as well. I think the aggressive quarters play can give them more problems, because now all of a sudden the middle field approach that they take to attacking these digs, with the way that our safeties have been playing and with the aggressive nature that Branch and Kirby can play with stepping downhill, we could do a nice job of taking away some of those passing lanes that they like to get to against some of those quarters looks. I think Stroud has been a little bit more hesitant actually to let the ball rip against zone coverage than he has against man without pressure. So if you're not creating pressure with 4 and you're only bringing a 4-man rush, zone coverage could actually be the spot to get to, because man coverage, I think you've seen that he's much more willing to just let the ball rip, and it comes back to timing there. They've been a little bit more inconsistent with their timing, but if Tank Dell is there, he's going to get the ball in those spots. Robert Woods, the timing has just seemingly been off at times against man coverage. That has seemingly been their issue. When Nico's out there, that timing is not off. The ball's going to get out of his hands. He's going to let it rip. But zone coverage, aggressive zone coverage, to me, can actually create a little bit more hesitancy from a guy like CJ Stroud without pressure than you will see from man coverage without pressure, because a lot of times it comes back to timing and he's willing to let the ball go in those spots, versus zone, where if things are a little bit condensed, sometimes he just won't let the ball rip without pressure. Being said, the receivers will definitely utilize a lot more double moves than I think what we saw last week, so that is the concern there, is that the receivers will definitely do that. I think, to me, the key against them offensively is doing a nice job of kind of squeezing and taking away those middle field throws, the seam routes from their tight end specifically. I think that is going to be the key in this game, is the seams and the digs. How well you take those routes away specifically in this game. The linebackers getting depth in terms of their coverage in those spots. Schultz will be utilized on angle routes. That middle of the field is going to be the spot that I think you have to do a nice job of trying to pull CJ Stroud away from. And if anything, make him work kind of the numbers, especially if you're bringing extra rushers, because the middle of the field is where he gets the ball too quickly. He'll hit tight window throws, but he can be a little bit less always there to recognize when he has some of the outside matchups when you're bringing extra rushers versus the middle of the field, which is typically where he wants to get to into those spots if he feels an extra rush pressure. I think they've been very inconsistent, speaking on to that point of creating hot reads for CJ Stroud against the blitz so far this season, specifically on third down looks, third and long. So when they get in a third and long, if you're bringing extra rushers, they're going to run their route concepts to the sticks rather than just getting the ball out of their hands. And because of that, I think blitzing on third and long is very effective because they're not doing a great job of finding hot reads, get the ball to the stands, let someone go get the first down. Instead, they're trying to still wait for the route to get there. And to me, that creates problems for them offensively. Bring them to third and long, absolutely a must in this game, and you'll find a lot of success, I think, in those spots. Now, that being said, zone coverage can definitely be attacked, and this is where Stroud is really good. Number one, Tampa 2 coverage has seemingly been a disaster for teams against CJ Stroud. Third down, second down, it's just not a great answer. They've done a nice job of overloading concepts. Again, they like to flood concepts, and Tampa 2 pulling a backer. Against cover 3, they found beaters of flooding the outside. They've utilized the running backs and their tight ends, so they have a lot of guys that get involved, which makes it a little bit difficult to kind of live in some of those coverages. Outside, I think a wrinkle that you could utilize is having your outside corners play some games with these receivers, right? I think they need to play games in terms of that we're going to show that we're going to protect the flat. If we're in quarters, we have to show some aggression there and just not let you take the flats. Because one thing we've seen out of CJ is that for zone coverage, he does a nice job of protecting the football. He does not throw into traffic very often. He does a nice job with his eyes and with the little pump fakes to try to make sure that he has openings and windows before he just lets the ball fly. So if you show that we're aggressively going to try to take the flats and we're going to kind of give you wrinkles if we're not just giving you the flats, like think about how the Lions played the Packers last week in quarters. They kind of just gave you those. The Lions, I think, are going to have to show a wrinkle between aggressively taking that away, then we're going to give it to you. Aggressively take it away, we're going to give it to you. And that's where the boundary side corners, Terrion, who is continuing to work to improve there, and Carlton's been excellent this season. That's where an aggressive zone coverage, to me, could come into handy so far this week. And again, quarters looks could be the way to do that once again this week. Their play action usage becomes very effective, and they'll do it in multiple different ways. Number one, they'll play off the run game kind of like we do with some of their screen tunnels on the backside. They'll utilize RPO passes to get out to the flats, and they'll also utilize power play action by pulling offensive linemen to try to set up chunk plays and really sell your linebackers a little bit downhill. So they do a nice job, a really nice job within their play action looks of selling it through zone coverage to find chunks into that second and third level. The way that they utilize the running backs in the pass game, motion pre-snap, routes out of the backfield, can be very effective. Their cover 4 beaters so far from what I've seen is a lot of digs and a lot of clear outs throughout that. The problem is without Nico Collins against quarters coverage, they haven't had a great vertical answer, and they really haven't found that shot play. If you play quarters with Nico on the field, that's where the shot plays come into play, and that's really open up those dig routes for themselves specifically, because the focus has to go to taking away Nico, and if he's one-on-one, Stroud is letting that thing rip. If your safety's late, he's letting that thing go, and he has the ability to push the ball with the best in the business in terms of a vertical pass, and because that quarters looks can absolutely be derailed by chunk plays and big plays from Nico Collins, who will absolutely open them up vertically.
You can see what Nico adds to this defense against those shell looks, and this is kind of how we got J-Mo over top against Dallas a couple years ago with that dig and then the post back over top, and then the cover 4 beater here with this bunch play right behind the backer, and this is where you'll see CJ hit those tight window throws if the safety gives that room.
So if he's out there, the Lions are playing cover 4, Carlton Davis, Terrion, how well do those guys play those vertical routes? Because I expect the ball's going to try to be taken over top, because that's how they seemingly kind of loosen up that type of coverage is without Nico. Against cover 6, they do a nice job of attacking the flats. Against third downs, they're typically going to want to use dig routes over the middle of the field to try to hit those, to try to find first down. Also a little wrinkle, when they're on their own end zone, expect a lot of running and expect a running back screen. That's typically what they go to. Third and long, they may eventually resort to a running back screen if you're trying to get very creative and play these 2 deep looks. They're going to throw running back screen because they like Mixon after the catch, and the same thing from their own end zone. They're going to get Mixon after the catch to try to create some of those run plays and just find an extension of their run game. I think for the Lions in this game, I think aggressiveness is important. I think you should absolutely blitz them offensively. I think if you're going to play cover 1, you have to go after this team. If you're going to do it on third down, cover 1 blitzing is a must, but you have to find a way to get there, because what they find against cover 1 is a lot of long developing plays. We've seen kind of the delay, little drag route where they picked up a big chunk against Packers because they were not blitzing, or these deep over routes which take a while to develop, but they're going to hit those shot plays against cover 1. So man coverage is fine. The problem is that you have to do a nice job of truly getting to the quarterback in those spots. Not going to blitz. I like going to zone a little bit more because I think there's a little bit more hesitancy that we've seen so far from Stroud without having his go-to guys. Nico Collins is there. It's more about the vertical option that he gives them over the top more than anything. That's where he becomes incredibly dangerous, and the Lions may may peel out of some of those cover 4 looks and instead get more into their base cover 3 and man coverage and force them to try to find answers out of that while cranking up more of the aggression defensively. Then on third down, cover 0, get after this team, right? Get after them, get the ball to their hands. Do not allow them to create long developing routes that eventually are going to get open. Expect the Lions to create interior pressure, but the key is specifically going to be how well can they get their edges to collapse the pocket. That is going to be the challenge as pass rushers. Hopefully Smith is available for that, and if he's not, again, guys like Josh Paschal, they're going to be huge to try to help us create some of that. Obvious pass downs, I actually think James Houston could find some real success. I think that he's too quick for Titus Howard, and I think against Laramie Tunsil, he actually can get under his pads a little bit. I think James Houston could find success, especially if Za'Darius isn't playing, but specifically on like obvious passing downs. If it's a 2nd and 5 and they're throwing the football, collapsing the edge is a must because I expect their interior to win regardless. But if it's 3rd and 12 and you're bringing the blitz, I think James Houston will actually find success tracking down CJ Stroud, getting an edge on Titus Howard and or Laramie Tunsil. This could be a real sneaky game that James Houston has 1 or 2 sacks or a couple of big pressures where he immediately gets a win on these tackles that maybe isn't being expected, but I think that he'll find that against these guys because I think he just matches up well with their offensive tackles. I think Houston's going to be a big challenge. I think defensively they are very sound in what they do defensively and the coverage variety that they have and the way that they play zone coverage, and they make you extend and create a lot of longer developing routes. So Lions need to live into run after catch opportunity, find a way to live into the run game specifically, and then also spacing, let guys work after the catch. I think that's the best way to go at these guys and potentially get some straight one-on-ones on the outside and straight wins one-on-one on the outside. I expect more heavy personnel. I think this game becomes a little bit more low scoring, a lot more rushing the football, and because of that, I have the Lions winning this game. I'm definitely concerned about the Taylor Decker injury. 21-14. I think it's lower scoring, more rushing. 21-14. The Lions get this win on the road. You'll take it however you can get it. I got lower scoring. I really like both defenses in this matchup, and I think there could be a little bit of struggles at times where both teams go a little bit of waves without putting up points. If Nico's there, he is the biggest concern in a game like this because he has the ability to break the game open in a game where I think their defense makes it very difficult to put up fast points. Nico's out there more than anything. Don't let him beat you over top. You have to find a way to not let that happen and make them methodically work the field because he is the one guy that becomes the game breaker when he's out there, and in a game where I don't think we may score a ton of points, you have to find a way to limit that from being the case and make them methodically work the field. So I'm going to go lower scoring. The Lions do a good job of taking away the big plays, and that's the focus if Nico is out there, and if he's not, I think they really collapse in zone coverage. So I'm going to go 21-14. Lions win this game. Lower scoring, a lot of rushing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Shout out to BetUS. That is YouTube 150, and I'm out.